Have Your Say, Hobsons Bay is a series of stories and experiences of people who live, work and play within the municipality of Hobsons Bay. Let's hear how their lives were changed because of COVID-19.
Have your say, Hobsons Bay.
Hi, I'm Lauren from Anecto Speakers Bank and I use she, her pronouns. Before we get started, I'd first like to begin our session by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Sovereignty has never been ceded, it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So today we're here with Scott Jackson. Scott, do you mind sharing a bit about yourself and what interested you about being on our podcast today?
I just want to share my story and hopefully that'll help others, or maybe not, but it may at least, the exclusion might be helped as well. But just like to add to the so-called disability, if you like, information stockpile, if you will.
Yeah. Would you feel comfortable kind of, I guess, sharing your story with us?
Yeah, so I went into hospital on the 5th of October 2014. I remember the date because it's my mum's birthday. And okay, a few days before, or the day before, I'd gone for a run and I kept going to the right, and I kept going to the right, and obviously my dog didn't care. But I knew there was something, the balance was gone and all that, because I usually cross a river on some stones, and I just knew I couldn't do that. And so I went through the river, ran back home, and luckily my wife, because I don't get headaches, and I said to her late on a Sunday night, I've still got this lingering headache, just won't go away. So luckily, her being a bit of a hypochondriac, I think, rang a doctor, a mobile doctor, who came out to see me, and I got rushed away in an ambulance. And luckily for me, the hospital is only 3 or 4 kilometres away. And if I had been, say, 15 kilometres away, I would have died from it. But so I got put into emergency straight away, and I had a little blood clot on my back of my head. But because it was on a nerve ending there and attached to it, they opened it up, had a look, and said, "Oh, we can't do anything about that." So they tried to, but luckily for me, it was quite cemented on. But they opened it up and had a look. Okay, and then put it back. And I woke up the next day and did do all the things. So I went through a lot of routines with doctors, nurses, occupational therapists. They kept asking me the same things. Anyway, 2 days had gone past and they still wanted me to stay in that place. And I was getting more and more frustrated because I could do the tests up and about. But then the swelling just wouldn't go down. No matter what they did, it wouldn't go down. And it got worse, so I was rushed into emergency, this time surgery, to get that, to get the swelling down. Things never been removed. It's still there, the blockage, so to speak, or whatever. It's not a blockage, it's something that's sat on my, they won't operate on it, because if it comes through and drops off, then it'll go straight in my head. They'll be in. So they don't operate that. So they removed some skull and a pipe came out the top of my head just to reduce the swelling. And the pipe was like taking some liquid out when it could. But this is where the story really begins. But this time I had some difficulties doing stuff. And so the right-hand side of the body wasn't, it could move, but dexterity was gone, really. And so they do a test and they text certain things out. Can you touch this? Can you touch it? But I'd always had the strength. And I kept doing this, and that comes later. Later on in rehab, I remember I just got sick of doing this, how's your strength, whatever. And I reckon, pulled the nurse's hand off. At that point, I got so sick of doing that. She said, grab my hand, and I almost crunched it in half, to be honest. But what I've learned from that is that it's funny what you remember. Only a few things, but you remember them very vividly. One was the person who brought around the food early in the morning, and they wanted me to tick the boxes to what I wanted to eat and sort of thing. One thing I will say to everyone is the food in hospitals is atrocious. Yeah. My wife says to me, why did you only eat the soup and the jelly? I said, everything else was shit. I wouldn't eat it in a million years. Anyway, so they came around, and because I couldn't write with my right hand anymore, I was looking and I said, I can't fill this out. And she said, oh, you can just write on the bottom what you like. I said, I can't write at all. Anyway, so that was my start of the journey with the deficiencies of having a stroke. So it took me ages, I reckon 6 months to start to come to terms with it. I wasn't going to be the same as I was before. And then when I had that realisation, I thought, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen here? And it's like, you can still do the things. Well, I can still do the things I used to do before, but with not the same efficiency. So I'll put it like this. If you're in a race and you come in the top 10, well, you can still do the running a bit, or I can still do the running a bit, but this time I've got to come to terms with the fact you can't go in the bottom 10. And in between is the sort of realisation you can come out of the top bottom 10. Never going to win again, but the improvement's going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was far more, what would you say, I was better at setting goals at the start, like walking around the block. I remember the first time I think I had a walking wheelchair, and then it became walking frame, and then it became a walking stick, and then it became just the most frightening part was without the walking stick, because people look at you and think, why are you sitting in the disabled zone, or what's going on here? But also came with it other complications. It's like I saw all the cracks in the footpath, and I saw the lip on crossing the road, all that sort of stuff. And I would say the major thing for me was getting on the tram and getting off the tram, especially getting off the tram, because I have a lot of problems with going down, perception of going down.
Yeah.
Which is unusual when you think about it. For the average person, getting down is probably a good thing. But I would say COVID, because I've had both of my wife's parents have died during COVID. So at the start, when the father was first to go, so to speak, and I think they were trying to work out what to do, hospital, the retirement villages, nursing homes, etc. We're just going through that phase of, listen, we'll be ultra conservative because we don't know what's going to happen. We've got no data really about this, not enough. And we couldn't go in and feed him. And the nursing homes are high class, yes, and high ability to deal with him was hard to find. And one of them actually just kicked him out. So we had to go and find another place. I remember the conversation vividly. She said, well, you've got to take him. And we thought, well, of course, we haven't got another place lined up for him. And so we had to run around and do that. Plus, it took 13 13 nursing homes we had to look at before we got this one, thinking it was the best one to go in. And of course, seeing him was it was like we didn't see him. It was like the end of the world. We couldn't get in, but he thought, oh, we just left him there. We're never going to see him again. But because of the dementia, he had dementia, I might add. As I got progressed, it became almost better because he thought we could say, all right, we were here yesterday, we were here, whatever. He didn't know. But by the time the mother passed away, and about a year later, everything had changed. Everything had sort of caught up. It was like being in a movie, and they were checking your temperature and everything. I remember walking into this, hospital, and it was like being on an episode or movie where it was like they were checking for your identity, but they were checking for our temperature and things, the scanning me, all that sort of stuff. But, I feel a bit for them because this probably technology will become something once COVID sort of decreases to a small level, and they won't think it's a big risk. It'll just be obsolete. Or maybe they'll use other things. But that's where I am.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I will say that the stroke journey has been a different one because you still have got some good things. They're just things you can do for. Like for me, I read a lot more than I used to. I write a lot more than I used to. I just see a lot more than I used to because I keep my sight out. But other things you learn too, it's like what restaurant or cafe has got heavy chairs, because at the start I needed a really heavy chair for the balance. I could push off that. Not as much today, but I remember one cafe I went to where I fell over because the chair was just so light, and I didn't really realise just how much I was relying on the chair. But I might say I've never been back to that cafe ever again. And my wife did say, why do we keep going to this cafe? And I said, well, it's because everything's sort of fixed and I can use it. I can go back to the cafe now.
Okay, that's good.
I now think about it as a coffee machine, but anyway, it's different.
If you wanted to stay there, yeah.
It was funny. I had a meeting with other people who had had brain injuries.
Yeah.
And the meeting was back at that cafe. So I was forced to go back there.
Oh, no.
And they said to me, do you know where Barry's Cafe is? And I thought, yes, I do. I know exactly where it is.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you've mentioned just kind of reminds me of, in general, of we don't, really, I guess, appreciate what we have access to until, until like, I guess, our ability or, our ability kind of affects the way we live. So, for example, completely not similar to your experience at all, but, I am used to having bad posture, and I have suffered the consequence of it quite recently with pulling my neck muscles, where it's like from the collarbone to pretty much the back of my skull, the muscles there have really reduced the range of motion and how I can like rotate my head. It's good now, but like, having to go through that really makes you realize how much you take for granted when you don't really realize what you have until that's been affected. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't, well, you might be the same, ask for help that much. And I didn't, with stroke, ask for much help. But then there was a couple of times I said to my wife, listen, it's not that I'm being like an arsehole to you. I just can't do this. And I remember that exactly saying this because it was a big deal to me. And that's one of the hardest things, just be in a position where you do have to ask for help.
Yeah.
And you do recognise that other people do find it a bit scary as well.
Yeah.
And you've got to
definitely.
take them into account more than what you did before. It also makes you evaluate certain things might have happened before and you just don't take any notice of it.
Mm.
It's a bit like I remember I was getting over a rock and I was almost crawling over it, dropped my phone, and then I looked up and these people were looking at me and all I could see was shock in their eyes. And I reckon from that point on, that's been etched in my brain. I'm thinking I've got to take more of what people say into account because there might be a hidden meaning to it that I'm not taking on board and things like that. Plus, I also don't want people to look shocked anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
From what you've said, like just then and previously as well, kind of just reminds me of, I guess society's perceptions of people living with disabilities or, kind of trying to learn how to live a new normal life or like find their new normal through, going through some events that, have kind of left you with an impact, where generally people kind of just see, oh, something's wrong from their own perspective that, what do you call it? Like, oh, this person, there's always like a deficit kind of viewpoint, whereas it's, they don't register, the person's capabilities and like their potential themselves. If that's
Exactly.
clear. Yeah.
I was saying that, I look at it in terms of like people you meet and then you might be in 6 months or you might be in a year and they say, gee, you've come a long way. But because I live with myself 24 hours a day, I don't notice the big changes. I notice small changes maybe, but for them it's like snapshots and it's like, gee, that's changed. This has changed. Couldn't do that before. So good for me as feedback, but also realise that these things are going on. They don't happen, it's not like an automatic thing you do it. It's a slow, gradual process.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going up a hill or down a hill, what better analogy I can make, but that's what it's like. Okay.
I guess, like it will be up and down some days. Some days you feel like you made a lot of progress and other days you may feel like maybe you're at maintenance or maybe you're not, maybe it's not as good of a day as it was yesterday. And I completely understand that. I just wanted to ask if, when the people that you've met, when they say that you've come a long way or they, I guess, track your process, that how do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's, I guess, it's received as good feedback, or do you kind of feel that maybe, okay, well, that's good to hear, but you also, well, I guess it also depends on how they phrased it. Because some people can be like, oh, you've come a long way and you're doing so great. And like, sometimes there's always the message of you're so resilient, but then other people can just be like, because it's their life experience that you're like, well, this is my life. Like I have no other option to just keep trying and keep pushing forward, and do my best.
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes I look at people and they're just scared.
Yeah.
They just don't know things. This is the unknown for them.
Yeah.
And they're thinking probably, it seems like for weeks, gee, we're going to see Scott. How's he going to be? Like I remember people I saw at the start and I would see now, and this person is quite different, but it's hard to get, if you like, follow-up, if you like, from people because they just think you're the same as you were at the start of the journey. They don't think it's going to be a progression. There's going to be improvement. And I'm including doctors in this too because my initial doctor, when I was doing the rehab, said to my wife, who'd had luckily for me, I look back at it, luckily for me, her mother had been in a wheelchair all her life. So she was quite harsh on me. I've done this, your wheelchair's really heavy. Mum's also this heavy, stuff like that. Anyway, so my doctor said to me and to her, I don't think we saw her after she said this again, but she said, Scott, if Scott sits in the corner, he'll have the same recovery if he does stuff like that, which I repeat to her all the time when I go and do stuff. The doctor said I could just sit in the corner. Everything would be fine. But she said, no, you have to do this. Yeah. But I would say to people, just be educated so you can decipher some things. And some things will fill in the blanks and some things will just be wrong.
Yeah.
But some things will be also stuff you never thought of before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you suggest for, people listening or watching this podcast, that if they're unsure, I guess, about how to, how to kind of follow up or ask about how the person living with disability experience is going? Would you just simply check in and just ask, or would you just, I guess, suggest them to do their own research? And
I think I'd suggest them do their own research and then if someone disagrees, ask them why.
Yeah.
And don't think it's a bad thing if they do disagree.
Yeah.
Listen, but the major thing for improvement I've found for me was don't stay locked up too often. Go out in the community, find out what the deficiencies are. You might find there's something in your head you thought, gee, that'd be hard to do, or I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You can actually do. You actually navigate it. It might be like it was previously. You can remember doing, but it might be something, and I'm talking simple things like walking down aisles at the supermarket or Bunnings, for example. See, it was vastly easier, and I said this to a psychologist at the time. I said it was vastly easier when I had the walking stick, because they looked at that and they said, oh, let him through. And that was a good thing. When I took that away, it was like they were just looking at me. So they weren't as accommodating. Yeah. And then you really notice if someone's rude, and it means it doesn't matter whether I have walks, this is just a rude person. Don't blame it on the walking stick. Blame it on the fact that that's just the person you don't want to talk to anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely.
And I think majorly people, or certain people, they want to be the victim, if you like. I know that's a word that's bandied around a lot, but it's a bit like don't look for the sympathy all the time. You'll get it if you want it, but be more proactive. Look for sort of empathy, like you've come a long way, do this, do that, and force yourself to do certain things. Yeah. You mightn't always tell the people you're doing that. You might tell them afterwards. I remember I did a few things and my wife was saying, why did you do that? Why didn't you tell me? And I said, well, if I told you, you'd say no. Don't do that. So I went out and did it anyway. But I take that on board now. I take it on board. I tell her, and then if she complains, I'll think about that at least. I might still do it, but, if I can't explain it to her, this is why it's going to happen, I think, well, I'm not going to do it. It's like getting over one thing I talk to a psychologist about every fortnight. Yeah. And one thing he sort of, if you like, talked me down from the ledge because there was some steps over this river. And I said, I'm going to try that. I want to get across this river. And he said, Scott, you've got to realise there's some implications if you fall off this for other people as well. Mm. And I said to my wife, I'm going to jump over these sort of things. She looked at me with horror too and sort of said, don't do that. Don't you ever do that. We've got a little dog and he fell off. He couldn't do it. And he went down the river. I think she had pictures of me flying down the river as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I'd like to tell you listeners, to this day, I still haven't done that.
That's okay.
But I might.
What do you think? I don't know. What could be Would you want to particularly like jump over that river, or would there be kind of smaller milestones to work your way up to that?
Well, yes, I'd like to jump over the river, but I don't think about it. And I think that's a bit of growth.
Yeah.
It's what will happen if I do it, if I don't do it.
Yeah.
Probably the same.
Yeah.
The same end, same ending. And it means, and I say this to everyone, listen, if I jumped over the river and told someone, they're probably thinking, well, I don't really care. Scott just said it'd be a step back. It's sort of, if I thought it was a big thing and they can do like no problem, they're probably thinking of it like that. I'm thinking, I'm going back to that sort of thinking Scott's got a, there's the other side of the coin. If Scott's got a sort of stroke and he's deficient and all sorts of things, but there's also the people you meet later on who would think that's fine. Okay, Scott went over the river. Whoopie to do. But if you met them at the start, they think that's amazing. And it's like, okay, it's not a big deal. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah.
But I looked at it initially like, okay, I fall off and go down the river. Big deal. And now I look at it and think, it's probably not going to be. For other people, it'll be a
and
big
for the
deal.
doggo. Little dog.
Yeah. And for the dog. The dog will probably look at me and think, why are you doing that? We've never done this before. It didn't work for me last time.
Oh,
why are you taking me back here?
You back.
Yeah. I'm not going across. And I do have thoughts of him actually staying on the other side, not going with me.
I just wanted to ask, like, what was your, I guess, experience during COVID as well, with your stroke and just recovering from the impact of the stroke as well, and how COVID kind of played into all of this. Sorry.
I think the sort of focus on the deaths of my in-laws was a big deal for me. Lenny being home all the time, I didn't realise that her going to work was a sort of break that I was getting, because I would say 18 months were fine, the first 18 months, but after that I went down to the coffee shop and I said, can I just stay here? Can I just be here? I don't want to go home. Yeah, 2 years. She's been off, not going to the office now for 2 years. Actually, no, that's not true. She went back into the office a couple of weeks ago, and that was great. And she came home and said, oh, the person I'm in charge of now has just tested positive. I can't go back in for a week.
You're like, oh no.
I almost cried. I had to go to another room. I thought I was through it, but and this has been one of the hard things. Sorry, she's back. So I'll just have a pause.
It's okay.
You're walking around, it's probably more for the dog. It sounds like it's got 6-inch stilettos on.
Is it his nails?
Yeah.
Oh. At least you can know where he is all the time. It's like
You want to have a look at him?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God. That's not such a small little pooch. He's beautiful.
No,
What's his name?
He was tiny when we got him.
Oh my God.
But he kept growing.
Hello, sweet angel.
He's probably thinking, why am I here? But it's a good test your strength.
So cute.
Because when we got him, it was like 2 kilos, and now he's 14.
Damn boy.
And he was meant to stay at 7. They said, he'd be about 7 kilos.
Oh, he looks so sweet. He's like, Dad, what are you doing? Put me down.
You've never done that before?
I don't know if you'd want me to keep that in the meeting, in the interview, or if you wanted me to cut that out.
please cut it out.
Okay, yeah. So I'll do that from when your wife and little doggo came down. And
Yeah.
All right. We'll do a pause. Do you mind telling me a bit about how your COVID experience was?
Yeah, because the funerals. So obviously my in-laws passed away during this time, and I was really brought home because of the funerals being so small. Now, my mother-in-law is Greek origin, so it was going to be huge. And everyone was sort of ringing up Leah saying, can I come, can I come, can I come? And it's like, well, only 10 can come. And it was like, so that was hard.
Yeah.
But it was also hard when the father died, because I thought he was quite a good guy, but there was very few people who wanted to talk. Consequently, when my mother-in-law died, I got annoyed that so many people wanted to come. I thought everyone wanted to come to his. Anyway.
Yeah.
But COVID was a big deal because, especially for the first one, they were like the nursing homes and retirement village and stuff, they were just worried about what was going to happen. So they were very strict with that one. Probably less with the second one, but still worried. But, there'd been the data or some data, so they'll becoming, I wouldn't say relaxed, but, less guessing was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
So apart from that, I felt a bit guilty about COVID because there was two things. One, I felt guilty. Two, I felt, geez, I wasn't doing much anyway. So COVID didn't have a big effect on me. It had a big effect on other people in the community, obviously. But for me, it was like, okay, everyday occurrence, this is what happens. I will say that I got to know everyone on political shows, American political shows, which I realised later that no one had a clue what I was talking about.
What political show?
I'd watched a lot of CNN, so I know sort of Wolf Blitzer, Aaron Burnett, Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon, Chris Como was there for a while.
I only know Anderson Cooper vaguely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife calls him the albino. The albino's back on 2 feet all the time. It's funny. It's a terrible thing because I know the order that it is into.
Oh, well, that's fair enough. Well, I just want to say we're almost at the end of our podcast, but thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast today and for sharing your story with us. Thanks again for joining us. And so if anyone watching or listening to the podcast would like to get in touch with us or learn more about Anecto Speakers Bank, you can connect with us on Facebook, email us at speakersbank@anecto.org.au, or give us a call at 0396877066. Bye for now and see you next time.
Thanks, Lauren.